Hello everyone. I'm very excited about today's video because it's the start of me covering PlayStation 3 games. I have a lot in my personal collection and I will be using those, as well as digital games, and occasionally, when I don't have the game, I'll get a guest reviewer in. So we can cover a really broad spectrum of games. But today I want to start with something a bit special. Special because it's a game series I simply love. And secondly, because I managed to get hold of an art book for this game. And I want to share the unwrapping with you today. I've been looking forward to this ever since it arrived, and it is, ta-da, Prince of Persia. Now, it looks like this was part of a collector's edition, I guess. I don't really know. It must be quite old, because although it's still got the original cellophane around it, it's sort of come loose, the cellophane, in a few spots. So it's obviously been transported around a bit. And it finally landed here, where I think it will find a good home. And I will now get the cellophane off so we can have a look at this book. And my expectations are wild. So this is the back cover. And this is the front. And you can see how the light reflects on this shimmering gold print of that gauntlet hand. Ooh. So I assume this is one of the art prints. The finish on it is glossy. So this is in fact the primer official game guide, written by Catherine Brown. It is of course possible. This book was quite common back when the game came out. Maybe many people have it. I just had never seen it before, and certainly not here in New Zealand. So when it turned up on the second-hand market, I felt I had to pounce. Now I can see straight away that the book contains some very nice colour print images. A lot of guides these days skimp rather on the quality of the image prints, and they often look blurry and fuzzy. But this one looks pretty good. And those are, of course, the two main characters in the game, the prince himself and Ilika. What makes a man a hero? Is it bravery? Is it courage? Is it a firm grasp on the difference between right and wrong? Or is it sacrifice? Is it finally getting everything you wanted, only to give it up for something greater than yourself? The man who would one day become a prince is about to learn this hard lesson and have his heart tested in ways that reveal the true material of a man. He will hurt, he will suffer, but he will stand taller for it and become the hero the world needs, lest it crumble. Now, one thing I enjoy hugely in the game, The Prince of Persia, is the interactions between him and Elika. They have a sort of bickering kind of relationship that shows they're really a good match for each other. But the verbal toing and froing, the barbed repartees are incredibly entertaining. I think the writers really, really had a good time writing that script for them. And while he, the prince, quite often comes off as a bit cheesy, I'd have to say, it sort of suits the game, and I don't mind, because it's always rather tongue-in-cheek.
About this. Okay, so you're not a conversationalist. Bet you wish you'd opted for conversation now, don't you? Yeah, and you can run too.
Why are you following me?
I'm not. I'm looking for...
Farah, I heard you yelling. You and your girlfriend should get out of here.
Girlfriend? Farah's not my girlfriend. She's my donkey.
You're risking your life for a donkey?
She's a good donkey. That, and she's carrying a king's ransom in gold.
Just get out of here. If they don't see you with me, you'll be all right.
Hey, you!
You want to time your advice better next time?
So the book contains the usual kind of strategy guide. Then there's an art gallery at the back. And what I especially like and am interested in is that there are several interviews with the people who made the game, the designers, the programmers, etc., giving background information, and I always find that fascinating. So let's go back a bit to the beginning. I was so excited to show you the book, I was diving straight in. What is so special about Prince of Persia? Why do I like it so much? And why am I covering it for PS3 games? Because Prince of Persia is a franchise that is not exclusive to the PlayStation 3. However, it was certainly very popular on the PlayStation, and it was trapped the franchise, you would say, starting on much earlier platforms, but the most recent games we have are trapped on that 7th generation of consoles, in particular the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360. It is, of course, also on PC, Prince of Persia, but PC is a totally different platform in my opinion. I personally don't play platformers on PC. I like playing them on console. That is when I do play a platformer, because as most of you know by now, I don't play them often. They can often prove difficult for me due to my hand condition. So I pick them quite carefully, and I find that the programming has to be exceptionally good for me to be able to handle the controls appropriately. So how did I first get onto Prince of Persia? I can't remember, it's a bit lost in the mists of time, but I know that the pictures and what I saw of it had always straight away appealed to me. There was adventure and excitement, of course, but this exotic world that really appealed to me.
This place is very familiar.
Who are you? What have you done?
Persia in particular has played quite a big part in my younger life because when I had to write my thesis at university, I wrote it on ancient Persia. So I still feel a kind of connection with that world. And I think Prince of Persia taps right into that. Now, when I started gaming, and we're talking very early days when I was literally just grappling with learning the basics, I must have talked to someone about Prince of Persia and saying I didn't know on which platform I should try to play it. I thought it would be too difficult for me. And this person advised me, you must play it on the Wii, the Nintendo Wii. That is the best version available. Prince of Persia, Forgotten Sands. And in those days, anyone who was a gamer and appeared to be knowledgeable, I thought, oh wow, I better get that version then. And I did. And you know what? It actually looks really good, the graphics. So there's nothing wrong with the Wii version. But the controls. I think I've talked before about what I think of the Nintendo Wii controls. You will recognize the Wiimote and the nunchuck. The less said, the better. I never could get used to controlling a game with that combination. So I'm afraid I didn't get far into the Forgotten Sands on the Wii, which I played on my Wii U, because it just drove me nuts, the controls. So I kind of forgot about Prince of Persia for years, I suppose. I did come across it, of course, when I got a Vita on the Vita store, which also houses PSP games, and several of the Prince of Persia games were ported to PSP, and I did get those and played one or two on or off a little bit, and they play quite well on the Vita, I think, but the graphics were probably a bit on the blurry, fuzzy side, as is common with many PSP games. So it wasn't really until very recently, when I was sorting through all my PlayStation 3 games, after that monumental announcement by Sony that they were going to shut down the store with very little warning, and I was getting ready to cover games, and I came across my copy of Forgotten Sands. I also have it digitally because I think it was a PS Plus game at some point a long time ago. So I thought, oh well, better give that a go. I started it up on my trusty PS3, and you know what? The Forgotten Sands? Forgotten time. I literally forgot the time. It just pulled me in straight away. It is such a cinematic game. It has a story. It's full of an adventure and mystery and, fantasy. Oh, it's got everything. But the reason I kept playing was the gameplay itself. I suddenly found that when I usually struggle with a platformer, almost any platformer, this one I had virtually no struggle. And that is, believe me, that is really unusual, that is exceptional. The reason must be that the original programming at Ubisoft was simply that good. Those people must have worked on the controls. It's just amazing to me what they achieved, that someone with a virtually crippled left hand can play this game. And I sometimes have to repeat a few of the platforming sequences. I don't always get them first time, but it's usually not too difficult, and I can just keep going. And that for me is a very new experience, and it is absolutely exhilarating. I can only say it plays as smooth as butter, in my opinion. An amazing game, and it rekindled my love of Prince of Persia.
Is this how you welcome family?
Ho!
You've picked a bad time for a visit.
I would have said you've picked a bad time for a war!
Well, next time I expect you, I'll tell my enemies not to invade. It's fortunate you're there. We need this gate open. The mechanisms are on those towers. Once you activate them all, the gate will rise. I assume since you got yourself up there, it won't be a problem.
Not at all.
Good. And then get down here quickly. I don't want to tell our father you were injured while in my care.
Your care?
Quickly now. The vault! Head to Solomon's vault!
Solomon's vault? What's he planning?
So after that experience, I thought, well, what other games are there? I better have a look, especially on the PlayStation 3, because those games are not going to be around forever, and prices were going up after Sony's announcement. And even once Sony retracted and said they're keeping the store open, it can be difficult getting hold of certain games. However, Prince of Persia, obviously there's enough copies still around, so nobody should have a problem getting hold of one. And I decided to get the original Prince of Persia for the PlayStation 3 as well. Now, I'll just quickly check the dates here because this is quite interesting. The game that is called simply Prince of Persia came out in 2008, so that's fairly early in the PlayStation 3's cycle. So it was released in the United States in December 2008 for the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, and later on for Windows PC as well. After that, 2 years later, we got Forgotten Sands. So that was released in May 2010, also for PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, but additionally for the PlayStation Portable, also the Wii, I've shown you that version, and the Nintendo DS got a port as well. I never bothered with that. And of course, Windows PC. However, since then, we have not had another Prince of Persia game on consoles. So these games are sort of trapped in time on these older consoles now. However, as most of you will be aware, we are getting a remake of an old Prince of Persia game called The Sands of Time. I'm not sure whether they will manage to bring it out this year. I think that was the plan. Otherwise, we might have to wait into early next year. And that's, of course, a classic going back to 2003, which came out on the Game Boy Advance and PlayStation 2 and the GameCube and Xbox, etc. So I am hugely excited for this remake. I do hope that the gameplay will still be as wonderful as it is in these older versions, and that they will include options for people like me to give a bit of accessibility for any particularly difficult controls and operations. So when I started up the earlier game, Prince of Persia 2008, I wasn't quite sure what to expect because I felt I was so spoiled by the wonderful graphics of the Forgotten Sands game that I thought, well, being a very early PlayStation 3 game, it won't be as good. No, the graphics are not of that same quality, but they did something very clever at Ubisoft. They decided not to go for realism or photorealism as a design decision. They opted for a highly stylized, painterly drawing style that looks just absolutely gorgeous. And to my mind, it hasn't aged. It looks today as good as it probably did back then. I got pulled in again straight away. Love the interaction between the prince and Elika.
No, you're heavier than you look.
The controls and the platforming are not quite as smooth and polished as in Forgotten Sands, but I'm finding it perfectly manageable. I just have to repeat a few sequences, maybe several times, if there's something in there that makes it more difficult for me. The only problem I have encountered that is something I just need to train myself out of, so to speak, is that the prince jumping forward against a wall so that he can climb up or go sideways, the usual operation. For some reason, I keep jumping off backwards, so that must be something maybe I'm not doing quite right. That can be slightly frustrating, but also quite hilarious, really. So that is the only issue I've had, that I need to practice a bit to make sure I don't get that problem too often. Apart from that, it plays really well considering its age, and overall I feel that they have organised the controls in such a way that they're not getting too complex, that you know, like in some games you think, oh my god, I got to press this button sequence 1 2 3 and then 4 5 6 and then these two together, and no, they've kept it streamlined, and everything just fits together really nicely. And if there's a combo, it is always a comfortable one, you know. So they're all very well thought out and well implemented, in my opinion. And that's obviously one reason why the games were successful, together with the story, the characters, and the whole ambience of of fantasy Persia, you'd have to say. But that's just fine by me, you know. I know a bit about Persian history, but I ain't gonna nitpick here, not at all, because this is a story, it's fiction. So this was by way of an introduction to the grand PlayStation 3 project that will be continuing throughout this year. Who knows, maybe even into next year. I've got that many games to cover. The PlayStation 3 was a powerhouse, and I am still emotionally very, very attached to it. I hope you enjoyed having a look at the book. Do let me know if any of you have this book and how you got it. That would interest me. I look forward to having your company for many more PlayStation 3 videos. I hope you enjoyed this one. Thank you very much for watching. As always, please keep well. I'm Food for Dogs. Bye-bye.